With Authors fans, we have some pretty big news from your host here, Erica Lance. We are moving to change the format of the show to be one episode. So there's a few episodes that were recorded the old way that we're doing the new way, and that's what you're listening to. So thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we love having you as fans. On to the show.
This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors. I'm your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the fantastic Bo Lake, and our guest today is Cathleen Davies. Woo! Woo! Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. So today, in my Drinking with Author swag that everybody on the show gets, I am drinking strawberry and peach juice with gin in it. So it's gin and juice. I keep saying that. It's not what actually people call gin and juice, but we're going to let that go. Bo, what are you drinking?
Well, today I have a chai tea latte because you made me crave one after yesterday when you were talking about it all day long. And I have a Blue Moon as a chaser, you know.
Oh, that's a chaser. I was all about those chai tea lattes. They were pretty epic. Kathleen, what are you drinking?
I've got your finest, cheapest bottle of Merlot that I managed to get at the co-op for $5 on the way home from work. So
I love it. I love it. Okay, so for anybody out there who doesn't know you, what do you write?
I focus mainly on literary fiction. I've got a collection of short stories out. I do some horror and gothic and sort of stuff like that. A little bit of poetry, but not really very much. Mostly literary short stories is my kind of area of expertise.
Very cool. And when did you start writing?
I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to write stories and stuff like that and poems and lots of things like that. I think when I started writing seriously, I was 16 and there was a writing competition at our college. And the winner got 100 quid or something, which was like a mental amount of money at the time when you're 16. And I came second and got 50 quid. And at that time, I was like, oh, this might be lucrative. And I was completely incorrect. But by that point, I'd applied to do the creative writing course at UEA, which I don't know if you know, probably an American audience. University of East Anglia has this fantastic creative writing master's program where lots of fantastic writers graduated from there, like Kazuo Ishiguro. I think Angela Carter taught at UEA at some point, and Amit Chaudhuri, and lots of brilliant writers. So I got into that, and then I got into a writing community, and then I kind of just stuck with it from there, really.
That's very cool though. And I love that you entered in one. That's kind of brilliant. The first go, like you have that. What made you decide to focus on short stories?
I think part of it at least is my uni upbringing. We had it split into like prose, poetry, and scripts. And prose, because the word count was always like sort of 2,000 words. So I just had a collection of lots of 2,000 pieces of short story when it came to publication. And I like them. They're like kind of encapsulated things, you know, short stories. It's like a whole moment caught. You know, poems even more so, really, really encapsulated, just a feeling, less than a moment. But I do actually write novels. I'm doing a PhD at the moment, and I've got this novel going called Stitches, which is a big old 8,000 word one. So I don't know, I stuck with short stories, I think, just because I hadn't started writing novels yet. So it's kind of just what I've got going on.
No, I think that's, believe it or not, a lot of writers have a very hard time writing short stories. Especially shorter stories. So I had an author on the other day that was like, yeah, I wrote a novella. It was 50,000 words. I'm like, that's not a novella. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
That's
the whole
that's actually novel. A book. Yeah, that's like a small novel. And it's funny because like even doing short stories and having anthology things and stuff like that, people tend to, you go, hey, it needs to be 2,000 to 5,000 words max. And they'll send you a 15,000 word story. And I'm like, we're not editing 10,000 words. We're not editing 2/3 of the story out of here for
And you'd be
you.
furious if we tried to, you know?
Exactly. I was actually one of the first publications I was in. We were supposed to write a max of 10,000 words. That's what it was. It was a 10,000 word story, right? And I wrote a short story. It was just like 10,005 words. Like it was that. So I was talking to the editor of that particular book, and she told me one of the other authors submitted a 30,000 word story.
Brutal.
And then told her to cut it wherever you want to.
I would be like, well, I'll cut you out of this whole anthology then, I guess, because you can't follow instructions.
So she told me, she's like, yeah, I cut it. I'm like, why would you cut it down? Why would you even try that?
Yeah.
But honestly, I read the short story. It didn't make any sense. I just was like,
Of course it didn't. It was mental fragmented. They'd lost 20,000 words of context.
Well, it's really funny. So I knew the writer, and I reached out to her, and I'm like, why don't you make this into a book? Like it was a ghost story, right? And she's like, oh yeah, no, I can do that. She was 30,000 words in, mind you. This is now 15 years later. She has not produced a book.
Right. Sometimes you just have that with projects, so don't you? The amount of times that I've been working on a project and thinking this is going to be amazing, and then I've dropped it because the momentum was kind of lost, and I ended up wanting to work more on other stuff. Is she still writing in general though?
I don't know. I just know there's no book. But I think that's true. You talk about it. I usually refer to them as story graveyards, where stories get put away. And sometimes you bring them back. Sometimes you go, oh, wait, that was a great, I'm going to bring that back.
Yeah.
And then other times you look at it and you're like, no, I'm never touching that again.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about, the story graveyard? Oh,
yeah. I mean, I do, especially working like with the publisher that I have at the moment, like they want a really fast turnaround. So I do go back to pulling out stuff that's been abandoned to be like, okay, I need to get this work out. I need some more stories to be released, you know. But I don't think the graveyard's a bad thing. I think writing, like any other art, like anything, you do it to practice it. Not everything's got to be a gem. Like sometimes you just explore, and sometimes you just play it, and sometimes you've got an idea and actually it's a bit of a rubbish one. But it's all fine. It's all good. It's all just getting towards the thing that's going to be good. And I'm definitely more of a drafter than a genius. Like I've got some people that were in my master's courses who were geniuses. Like every sentence they wrote was beautiful, and they, you know, spent so long doing a single draft because they weren't writing anything mediocre. I'm not like that. I will do very, very quickly a mediocre short story and then edit it into an all right short story, and then edit it a little bit more into an even better short story, and then, you know, so I lose maybe half the words that I write. That's fine for me. And it's really beneficial for a PhD as well, because there's a lot of like putting in lots of hard work, and then your supervisor going, oh, this is great, but I think you should maybe change it all. And for me, I'm like, cool, yeah, that's fine, I'll change it all, I'll do another draft, that's no problem. Whereas I think for a lot of people a lot of my PhD friends are like, oh yeah, so that's why I had another nervous breakdown this week. It's just, you know, part and parcel of it.
I think it's interesting you said that, because you do run into authors who think every word they write is a gem. It's a diamond on that piece of paper, and how dare you touch it and stuff like that. And not that you can't love your work, because I think you should love and enjoy your work. But if you have experts or things like that around you that are trying to give you advices on your work, you have to be open to at least listening to them and go, let me look at what they're saying to see if it has value to what I'm saying, and not like, oh my God, how come they didn't think everything I wrote was the perfect thing to write in a million years?
Yeah, I think that's why workshops are so helpful. Because I mean, I've kind of gone full circle. Like I was a creative writing undergraduate at UEA, now doing my PhD there, and I lecture as well, and I teach undergraduate classes on creative writing. And the workshops are so beneficial because you're reading your work out and you've got a class of 10 other people who are giving you their feedback. And the thing is, you can always tell, like, if 5 people in the class understand the story and understand what you're trying to do and are giving you the same constructive but slightly negative feedback, that's because you've not achieved your aim. But if there's 5 people in the class that are giving you constructive feedback and because they have no idea what you're trying to do and what the story's about. That's maybe because they don't understand it. And I think that's fine. That's why we have critical analyses that go alongside it. That's why we accept that art is, you know, down to interpretation. But you've got to kind of get, okay, is this feedback that I'm getting, do they know where I'm coming from? Do they understand my aim, and have I achieved it? Because if I haven't, I need to fix that. And if they've completely not understood where you're coming from, sometimes you can ignore it. Sometimes you need to think, okay, why have so many people not understood where I'm coming from? But you need that like quantity. I think the quantity of feedback is just always beneficial. Get as many people to read your stuff as you can.
Yeah, I think that's the importance of a street team. Like, even if you want to put stuff out, having a group of people that you know like your work and stuff like that, but can also go, hey, I don't understand this, or you give them a piece and go, what do you think I'm trying to say here? I had that with one of my first stories. There's a ghost in it, and my team went, is this person supposed to be dead? And I'm like, why? And they're like, yeah, no, that was a guess. We couldn't tell. And I went, okay, well, I need to go back and fix that.
Yeah.
So that it's a little bit more understandable for what I was trying to accomplish. I can't go, well, you're dumb. How dare you not see this brilliance that I had written? You know, you got to go, I want the public to consume this. I don't want 5 people on planet Earth to read this and get it. I want, 5 million people on planet Earth to read this and get it. And, that sort of thing.
If we can get 5 people on planet Earth to just read my work, I'm thrilled, to be honest. But like, yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think because I'm really big on like DIY stuff as well, and kind of punk culture and stuff like that. And I have like some good writing communities, especially being in Norwich in the UK. It's like very much a literary hub. And I think what I encourage everyone to do, including all my students, including myself, is just shove it out there. All of it, just shove it out there as a kind of like trying thing, and get feedback on it and change it as you can. So if you've got a poem that you're not sure of, why not perform it at a poetry night and listen to what the other poets have to say about it? Because, that's what those nights are for. And you can gauge their reaction and figure out, okay, so that punch didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to because there weren't any gasps in the room, or like I told that joke bit in the poem and no one laughed, so something's amiss here. But just kind of keep going and just give it a go, because you don't know who it's going to resonate with. You don't have to be perfect every single step of the way. It's just about doing it. That's all. Doing it yourself.
No, that's very true. So what is the name of your first book?
Cheeky Bloody Articles.
Brilliant title.
Thank you.
And that came out when?
August 2022. So about 6 months ago, maybe.
So what was that like when that got published?
Bizarre. I think I sort of thought that it would get published and overnight I'd be an international bestseller and this official proper author. And actually that didn't happen. It came out, lots of my friends and families had copies of my book and like took pictures and showed me like, hey, look, I'm reading a book, and that was lovely. But it was very much the same as like, when I was publishing short stories and people were doing the exact same thing, like, hey, look, I'm reading a short story. But it has been cool, actually. And the kind of pride that I got, it's gradual. It wasn't like an overnight success, but it's just these tiny, tiny little things of like people saying to me, oh, what do you do? And I'll be like, oh, I'm doing a PhD in creative writing at the moment. And they'll be like, oh, creative writing. Oh, so you want to be a writer? And I'll be like, well, I am a writer, actually. I've got a book out. Oh, what a feeling. It's been years and I've not been able to do that. And it was like just really, really incredible. And I love it as well. Like, I love the cover of it, which wasn't my doing. That was the team's doing, and they're wonderful. I love the little epitaph that I have to my nephews and being able to show my nephew who's 5 and he's just learning how to read. And I'm like, oh, well, whose name's that? And he's like, Max, that's me. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because I wrote it. Yeah, it's been really fun. And because that was a collection of short stories as well, a lot of it was just editing. It wasn't too hard to put together. I probably should have worked harder on it, realistically speaking. I had a lot of irons in the fire. But yeah, it was just reading through lots of short stories, putting them together, editing them as best as I could. And by the end of it, I was quite pleased. Yeah. So it's been bizarre. It's not been everything I thought it would be, but it's yeah, it's been good.
Well, and so you got feedback from friends and family. Have you seen other reviews?
No, I don't think so. All
Do
my
you
reviews
stalk your reviews?
No.
Well, then you have a hard time seeing your reviews if you don't stalk your reviews. They're not going to just come knock on the door and go, I have a review for you about your book. Wouldn't that be cool? It'd be People had to come door to door to give you
no, that wouldn't be cool. I would hate if someone came to my door and knocked and was like, I gave you a 1 star. And I'm like, why? I don't know. And then they just leave. Because they're still not going to verbalize it. Even like those people who just leave the 1 star, no comments. I don't think they're going to give you comments if they stop at your door either.
Well, and that's the thing. There's a big difference between leaving a review and leaving a whatever that is, when the stars. I forget what that's called, but that's dumb to me. Like, they shouldn't actually allow that to occur. Like, if you're going to leave a rating, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
If you're going to leave a rating, you got to leave a review. That's how that works.
Yeah, because it's not helpful. It just makes you feel bad about yourself. And then you're like, I don't know how to improve. Or if I even need to improve, what is this person even talking about? Because I don't know.
Yeah, no, but you do on Goodreads and things like that, finding reviews and stuff, if you want to look. But you're going into, Kathleen, obviously, as Bo would put it, the danger zone. Like, because you'll have the good and the bad, you know, it goes both ways. But a lot of times you get an opportunity to see what people who have found your book are saying about your book. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's kind of like, it feels odd and narcissistic to be Googling your own name and Googling your own book and stalking the places where you can buy it and seeing what's been said. But it did remind me, when I got set up with my publishers, they were like, you know, sort out all the social media, and I had to create a Goodreads author account and stuff like that. And I was adding the publications, the anthologies that I was a part of, to my list, and I got to see the reviews. It was brutal, man. Not because the reviews were bad, because like I was in this anthology called Love Bites, which is about the death of Peter Shelley, who's the frontman for the Buzzcocks. My MA supervisor got me in on that, which is fantastic. And I opened the book with my short story because I did like one of their first ever songs on their first EP, Spiral Scratch. And there was a review that was something like, oh, it's a bit hit and miss. They definitely improve as they go on. And I was like, oh, like, not even personally aimed at me, not horrible, nothing about it. But I was like, oh my God. But, you know, actually, I kind of agree with him. I read that anthology when it came out and I was like, why am I in here? Everyone else is brilliant. Oh God, this is mortifying. But of course, that was going to be the case. It was my creative writing supervisor and all his mates. And, you know, I'm not at that level yet, or at least I definitely wasn't when I was 20, 22. But still glad I did it, I think. But stalking reviews, like you said.
Well, and here's the thing. I actually recommend that authors set up Google alerts for themselves and their books, because you will be surprised. And not every review do you get a Google alert that you got a review. That's not how it works. But it does show you when people mention your book or talk about your book in blogs or you know, on Facebook and stuff like that. You get to see when people are talking about it, which can be kind of nice, or when they tag you in an article and things like that, which again has usually 90% of the time great results. And then there's, you know, 10% of the time you're like, what did they just say, you know? But I think that it can be healthy, because that at least tells you how you're being broadcast. But you have another book coming out, right?
I do, yeah, next month actually. Sorry, that's called Anne Marvel. It's like a sort of memoir thing about my partner's suicide back in 2018.
Well, that's very cool. When does that come out?
March 16th. So
that's exciting. It'll be out when this airs. Yay.
It's a bit exciting. It's a bit terrifying. I'm horrified about it, to be honest, but it's happening. But yeah.
Why do you feel that way about it?
It's so personal. It's so personal, and it's very traumatic. I mean, actually, because I work with Bo, I was talking about this, and I said to her, like, listen, I've not edited this fully and I can't read it again. I'm sorry. I'm just sending it to you. But it's really great about it. Don't worry. Look after yourself. Yeah. You've got an editing team. It's absolutely fine. But it's been emotional. January was a rough month for me, because it's reliving a lot of trauma. Like, you know, this is about the suicide of somebody that I really, really cared about, who wasn't a perfect person, who was often, you know, quite cruel to me. And I was rehashing those opinions. And it's not so much about him as about me running off to the Basque Country and having a nervous breakdown, because I did that thing of like, I'll get away from this, I'll have a fresh start. But I didn't get on any medication. I didn't see a counselor. I moved away from my family and my friends and any support network. I moved somewhere where it was €2 for a pint of beer. That's a mistake if you're grieving. And yeah, that's when I wrote the whole thing. So it was hard. It was hard to write. It was hard to read. It was hard to edit. And when it comes out, I'm so terrified of the backlash. I'm so terrified. I feel like lots of people will quite rightly be like, what right have you to do this? And I'll have to be like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know. It was cathartic. I thought it might help someone. But honestly, I'm terrified. Yeah. It's a real mixed bag of emotions.
Well, and I think it's wonderful that in a way that's your truth on it, because when something is very, very personal, I mean, it's one thing if you write, high fantasy and you're talking about elves and all this stuff and you love your world, but it's very different when you're talking about stuff that specifically happened to you, right? Mm-hmm. And there is because not everyone in the world will agree with everything everybody writes, mm-hmm. But I think if you can put on your sort of battle armor for it, you will make a difference. And there will be people who've had that. And, we had somebody on recently who had wrote a book because her husband had died, right? And she's like, well, I think only these people will read it. And I said, when it comes to certain things and certain emotions, people go through it. And believe it or not, a lot of literature helps people find that what they're feeling or what their emotion, they can express it and they can go, okay, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy for having felt this way and stuff like that. Because a lot of times, sort of what you described, people don't necessarily realize where help avenues are for them or feel comfortable getting them, because depending on how they were raised, I have several friends that you mentioned, hey, maybe you should talk to a therapist about this. And they're like, oh, no, I would never share with a stranger. And I'm like, you mean a stranger that went to school for like 8 years to understand talking to somebody about things like this? That stranger? Oh, I can never talk to a stranger. I'm like, do you know a therapist then? But they don't do that. So I think it's very brave and very awesome that you did that, although I can completely understand being terrified about it.
Yeah. I mean, it is terrifying, but I mean, like my editor came back to me after she'd done a great job editing it. I'm sure there's still typos. I'm sure there's still mistakes. I couldn't look at it. By the
way, there will never, ever not be typos and mistakes. True. I don't care if you send it to 75 people.
Yeah.
Like you look at some of the books put out by the world's most famous authors, and there are typos in them. It's just an impossibility. I think they grow spontaneously too in books. Like they're not there.
As soon as you hit
print, they're suddenly there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but my editor, she was saying to me as well, yeah, thanks for writing this. I lost my partner when I was 18 to suicide. And I was like, whoa, what are the chances? I said, I'm so sorry. And like, I couldn't have asked for a better or more understanding or empathetic editor. Like, thank you so much. But wow, what are the chances? That's mad. And she was like, well, not really. I think it happens to a lot of people. And, suicide is something it is increasing, or at least it's being spoken about more. And in the UK, it's getting worse because we've got this horrendous cost of living crisis and there isn't much of a future for young people anymore. And it's really terrifying. I was speaking to my ex the other day and she was talking about, she just left a partner of 4 years who was pretty awful. And she said, well, I stayed so long because I thought she was going to kill herself. And like, it does happen a lot. There is this kind of manipulation. There is a gap that isn't being filled. There's a glamorization of mental health issues as well as a complete stigma. So it's really hard. It's really hard to speak about it honestly. And I'm as guilty as anyone else. When I was an angsty teenager, I very much sort of idolized this kind of thing in stories. And actually, we probably shouldn't. So I think as long as I thought, I wouldn't have published it if I didn't think that some people would get something from it. And like I say that in the book, like had I had a book written about this when it was happening to me, I think I would have felt better. Because unfortunately, it is going to happen to a lot of people. A lot of people are manipulative. A lot of mentally ill people, especially, even with their death. And that doesn't mean to say they're terrible people. It just means to say they're really ill. But it has a ripple effect. It does.
It does. And I think you're completely correct. I think there's more people that have experienced that. And, it is on the rise, and COVID didn't help anything in that regard for both sides of that, for people who have mental illness, which, yes, there's way too much stigma and that should be solved, and people who are suicidal. And they're not the same thing always, right? Just because you're suicidal does not mean you're mentally ill. And I think a lot of people get put into that category. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, obviously they must be crazy. They killed them. That's not how that works, right? So I think your words are very important.
Yeah, I mean, like, can a mentally sane person kill themselves? I mean, it's a hard thing to ask. I mean, I don't know. I find it, Philosophy Tube, she did a fantastic video about this, called something like The Cosmonaut. I don't know if she still has that video up because it's before she came out, so maybe it's down. But it's a bit of a weird, like, theoretical thing when you think about it. Like, is everyone who kills himself mentally ill? In this society, you want to say yes, but then at the same time, when you think about people in cults that all kill themselves, what did that happen as a result of mass depression? Probably not. Did it happen as a result of brainwashing? Probably. What about people that did it for good reasons? Would I do it if I thought I would be tortured otherwise? It's just a really complex issue, and I don't necessarily think we're always going to have the answers, especially when it comes to mental illness. It's such a muddy grey area with no clear diagnoses, with no proper understanding of it, because we're basing everything on how people say they feel, and a lot of the time people aren't honest. So it's a really complicated issue, and I've got past the point of trying to figure it out. Like, I write about this in the book. I spent so long trying to figure it out, how I could have stopped it from happening, why it happened, what went wrong. And actually, you don't know, and you're never going to know. And after a while, you've got to kind of put it away and just accept that there are some things that are beyond your control. This isn't very articulate, but do you get
it's perfectly articulate. It's perfectly articulate. Absolutely. No, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with Drinking with Authors. Hey, listeners, you know me, Erica Lance. You're just listening to me in the podcast that you had. But guess what? I'm doing something new.
Yeah, she's joining me, Mark Muncy, the author of the Erie, Florida book series in Erie, Appalachia, and we are hosting a new podcast called Erie Travels.
Woo-woo! Erie Travels, which covers things like ghosts, cryptids, weird stuff, UFOs, Men in Black, all kinds of fun things that people talk about, and I'm sure you've discussed with friends.
Yep, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform of choice, or find us at erietravels.com and join in the fun and all the spooky goodness.
And of course, Mark, what do we always say?
We'll see you on the other side.
Okay, we're back. So you're working on an actual novel now, right? What is your writing journey that you want in the next few years? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? Because you're going for your PhD, which is brilliant, but you're like in it, like you're super in it when you're like, I'm getting my PhD in this, you know?
Yeah. Oh God, I'm taking it as it comes, to be honest. I mean, like, I've got a collection of interconnected short stories called Fluid, and that's based on 1970s artwork that's got body fluids and stuff like that. It's very cool. For me, the research was super cool because it was like really punk, and I was looking at performance art and like Coombe Transmissions. It was really great groups that were where I'm from, like Hull in the United Kingdom. I'm sort of near there anyway. And yeah, you know, Carolee Schneeman and all these wonderful people. I want that to come out by the end of this year. So like, thankfully my publishers, they're fast moving. So I think that should probably be out by the end of 2023, all things considered, maybe early 2024. We'll have to see how that goes. Obviously when I finish my PhD, that'll either be, I've got either a year and a half yet left or 2.5 years. To be honest, most people don't do their PhD in 3 years. I think I will try to. I have like the first draft of the novel, but I've got to do the critical as well, which is hard work. But like when that's done, I want to get the novel published, ideally. I've been working on this thing called Skets as well. I put that away for ages, but it's definitely still on the back burner, where it's like about young girls and sexual development, and this theory that I've got that like in this patriarchal world that we live in, or at least that I grew up in, it was impossible for girls to come to terms with their sexuality without trauma. I don't think it was possible. I think if you did it too soon or too late, you were judged for it anyway, or you were queer or you were straight, and either way it was horrendous. Yeah, and I'm writing lots and lots of short stories, so hopefully I'll have enough collection of just straightforward, unconnected short stories out soon. So I've got lots of ideas in my head that I'm kind of working with. In terms of the journey, I don't know. I'll just see. Like, you know, either a story will get picked up or it doesn't. But I'm more into the process and like what I am creating than the journey of where I'm going to end up. Because there's no point, if you're an artist, there's no point in thinking, oh, I'm doing this, so I'll win this prize, and so I'll do this, because it's so shaky. Like, there's so many more writers than there is a demand for new writing. So you just got to do your best and do it for the sake of it and see what comes of it. And that's my kind of attitude, I think.
Well, that and find your audience. That's the biggest thing as an author, is finding your audience, for those to build up that fan base. Because even some of the greats that we talk about, you know, talk about Hemingway, and you talk about Edgar Allan Poe, and you talk about, you know, T.S. Lewis even, and oh my gosh, how did I just forget Lord of the Rings name? Anyway,
Tolkien.
That is how I forgot Lord of the Rings name. But you know, these people, when they published their books, they weren't nearly the big deals everybody thinks they are now, and they weren't what, you know, it didn't just happen overnight for them that they were these great things. I mean, a lot of those books that I just talked about were put into really weird categories, like where people were like, this is not real fiction, you know what I mean? Like T.S. Lewis, this is not real fiction. It kind of is, you know, everybody reads it now, but it wasn't at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I monopolized that entire first section again.
You always do. You always do. What has the process been like writing a novel as opposed to short stories?
I've built up around it, and connections, I think, is the main thing. I didn't set out to plan a novel as well. Like, I was writing a short story. It actually came from my master's course. There was this module on intertextuality, and we read Frankenstein because there's loads of intertextual references in Frankenstein. You know, like the monster learns to read with all these books that are like super famous at the time and were mentioned. And then the next week we did fairy tales, and we did Angela Carter and all that sort of stuff. And I wrote a story about Frankenstein set in a modern day. And then I wrote a story about Cinderella being kidnapped by this aristocratic foot fetishist who removes her feet. And I didn't know what I was going to do for my final piece. And I thought, oh my God, all of this is connected to bodies and their removal and their reintegration. I should slam them together. And it started out as a 3,000 word short story, where this Cinderella character meets up with this Frankenstein character in a hospital, and they end up this kind of body swapping thing. And I realized as I finished the 3,000 words, like, oh, this isn't complete. So I did a little preface at the beginning when I submitted it, like, this is a section from a novel. I chose these chapters because it best represents the full plot, but it will, I promise, be fleshed out. And I got a very good grade. It's absolute rubbish. I thought it was absolutely rubbish at the time. I was like, I'm never touching this again. And then I knew I wanted to do a PhD, and it was like, right, what project am I going to focus on? Is it going to be skets? Is it going to be, you know, various other things that I've since dropped? And in the end, I was like, I keep coming back to this thing, and I keep playing around with it. And it was so much fun. And it was so fun because it wasn't literary fiction. This is campy, ridiculous horror. This is like horror hospital, kind of just Rocky Horror Picture Show ridiculousness. It's all, but that makes it fun. And that means, like, it doesn't matter if I have these kind of like tongue-in-cheek, eye-rolly references. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because when I describe the plot to people, especially on the PhD, they tend to look at me kind of baffled, because they're like, I'll be like, oh, what are you doing? They'll be, oh, I'm looking at you know, Irish literature in the 1800s with a spin on men's mental health and the potato famine. What are you doing? And I'm like, So I got this thing about feet. It's really bizarre. Basically I built around that, and I started building more and more chapters, and then before I knew it, I was like, okay, I've got all these chapters, but it's not cohesive. How can I fill in the blanks? And then I filled in the blanks, and then I had a first draft, and then it was like, okay, but some of this is really shaky and not really believable, so I started rewriting it, and then I had a second draft, and then so that's how I do it, bit by bit, interconnecting things and then filling in the gaps, and then when it's all done, looking at the glaring potholes and kind of reframing them. So it's a lot of drafting and a lot of redrafting. Like I said, I'm not a perfectionist straight away.
I like that though, because I feel like I get bogged down in trying to be perfect the first time around, and so I'm not productive at all. But it sounds like you're productive all the time to just try and do things, putting square A in the whole B or whatever, and moving things around. And I like that like concept of just letting it happen.
Thank you. Yeah, it worked for me, definitely. I mean I think a lot of people, especially people that are perfectionists, have kind of been slightly dismissive of it, because I come along to seminars with these ridiculous first drafts with things that don't really make sense, and then I end up getting really good grades, and like, oh, but she's nowhere near as talented as me. And no, not really. No, you're probably right. But also like I just work hard at it and do it constantly, and I do it constantly because I really enjoy it, actually. I think if you force yourself to do it when you're not enjoying it, you won't. But playing is fun, and I think as long as you see it as just playing around, which is what it is, playing around and creating, then it is fun, and then you don't mind doing it over and over again and playing around with it. So yeah.
What other once you finish this like campy horror book, what do you think you'd like, a genre you'd like to try?
Oh, I do love horror. I do love horror in the Gothic, definitely. I'm big on like kind of body Gothic stuff. For a while I wanted to write dystopian when I was a teenager, and then I kind of backed away from that idea. I think it was during a big dystopian phase. I love literary fiction. I think my heart will always kind of attach to that kind of stuff, like the fragmented slice of life, true to reality thing. And I always kind of wanted to be this gritty, realistic sort of person, but that, obviously that's not worked out. I'm writing stitches. But I don't know. I don't know what I'll want to try until I try it and realize I love it. I know that's not really an answer. That's sort of what do you want to try next? Oh, everything that I'm already doing, actually. But I don't know. I don't know. I can't.
You're like, who the fuck knows? I'll figure it out.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Well, but that can sometimes be the best way to work it, because I've also seen people go in to try stuff, which I think everybody should try. This is not me saying you shouldn't try, but then they start forcing to try it, or they don't go get enough understanding of the actual, like, what they want to write. Like, I write horror as well. Bo writes horror as well, but I've seen people try to go write horror that write, for instance, sci-fi, and I'm like, did you read a lot of horror books before you wrote this? Like, because it reads like a sci-fi book where they're trying to kill people, and I'm like, you can do that, but this doesn't read like, you don't have the tension that you need to put into a horror book, or the gore, or you know what I mean? Like, this is just a sci-fi book where you murdered somebody, so it's still a sci-fi book and just somebody died, not a horror book.
That's absolutely fine. You can have sci-fi horror, like Alien's absolutely fantastic as an example.
Aliens is my favorite movie of all time.
Aliens, the sequel.
Yeah, that's not the first one, the second one. The second one I think is brilliant. I love the Ripley character because she was one of the first, Princess Leia, her action adventure female badasses. But the humor in that horror movie was, to me, just epic. Like, they nailed the tension, the scary stuff, and then the humor, which yes, so that is my favorite movie of all time. Just in case anyone's wondering, I will rewatch that movie so many times during the year.
It's fantastic. I read this great thesis. It was somebody had written a thesis on gynophobia. Can't remember who it was. It was an Australian writer, and I wish I could remember her name, but it was free online anyway. And I was reading it when I was doing research for my own thing, because I do a lot about horror film. And she talks about the vagina dentata and this terrifying birth and this terrifying kind of Freudian connection with all this stuff. And her analysis of Alien was just really, really interesting. And the cat survives, which is my favorite bit. Soon as you see a pet in a horror film, you're like, oh, you're gone, mate, sorry. And the cat survived. Oh, great stuff. Love to see it.
No, it's true. You know what's funny is somewhere I have a piece, there was a sketch of what the face hugger was supposed to look like, but the original sketch was just talking about what they wanted it to do. So it looks like a little like Pokemon almost. It's not terrifying at all, flying through the air. And it's one of my favorite things ever, knowing what a face hugger turns into. But it's like this little hand-drawn sketch from somebody going, it's going to come out of this round thing that looks like an Easter egg on the sketch, not like this thing. And it looks like a little flying stuffed animal through the air. And somebody took that and then made the face hugger. So very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Bo, I'm sorry, interrupting. We talked about aliens. Go ahead.
Is there a genre you are too afraid to try but wish you could try?
No. No, sorry. I feel like that's disappointing. No, I like, if I wanted to try it, I'd just give it a go. If it was rubbish,
Yeah.
it's rubbish, you know. I'm not scared. I'm not scared to try anything. Writing wise, I'm scared to, like, you know, I'm not going to try cyanide, but like, yeah, for sure. I think if I ever wanted to take a stab at fantasy or sci-fi or any of the genre fiction, like film noir or whatever, I would happily play around with it. I can't promise it would be any good. In fact, I'm sure it definitely wouldn't. I'm a little scared of poetry, actually. Now that I think about it, I did a poetry night last night where I performed like kind of ad hoc. I didn't know I was going to be doing it. And poetry sort of scares me because it's one of those perfectionist things. Like, every word is put down with meaning. It has to fit into a rhythm, a rhyme, not necessarily a strict rhythm or rhyme, but it has to sound right. And like, you have so little space that everything must be put down with precision. That's what I tell my students. And I don't write like that. So writing poetry is incredibly difficult for me. I mean, in Marvel, I have some poems and they're all terrible. Like, I'll admit it, they're all terrible. They're written by a grieving lunatic who was trying to imitate a far better poet who had died. So I'm a little scared of poetry, actually, in hindsight. Or more, I'm scared of people reading my poetry because I don't think it's very good.
But how did the poetry night go? Was it good?
Oh yeah, that was great. Fantastic time. It's called Last Poet Standing. So there's a pub in Norwich called Last Pub Standing. The whole road, Norwich is one of those cities that had more pubs than there were days in the year at one point, kind of thing. And it's not that big. And there was also a street that was full of pubs, and then little by little they all closed down. And this is the last one, the last medieval one. It's amazing. It's got like a glass floor, and you can see underneath into the cellar where there's kind of like this skeleton with pirate loot and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, there they do a poetry night called Last Poet Standing. And I turned up at the request of one of my friends, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they didn't have enough people, and they were just like, hey, you performing? Are you just here to see it? And I was like, oh, I'm just here to see it. And they were, oh, you sure? We've got a slot. And I was like, yeah, whatever, slip me in then. And didn't have any material, and just did the stuff that I memorized, and did a poem that I didn't know by heart, but that I winged it, basically, because it seemed appropriate for the other poetry that had come before. And I think because I was quite honest and vulnerable, and I said to them, like, listen, I don't have any material. I didn't know I was going to do this till an hour ago. I'm just giving it a go. Be nice. They were incredible. And yeah, the audience was really lovely, and a lot of the poets came up afterwards and was like, that was fantastic. And I was like, no, you were fantastic. And yeah, it was a really lovely community thing. It's definitely something that I'm going to do again. But that's it. You can't perform prose, not as well. I don't think it's as interesting to stand and read a story as it is to perform a poem. So I'm always going to make the effort to do that as a marketing tool. I'm doing it actually at the end of the month at a place called Toast. It's a Norwich Arts Centre, but they're fantastic. Toast poetry, if anyone wants to follow them on Instagram. But yeah, it still terrifies. I'll do it, but I mean, I hate it, but I'll do it.
That's really brave. That's so brave.
Thanks. It doesn't feel brave. I'm shaking the entire time. You know, I'm not super like socially extroverted. I know that seems ridiculous because I'm talking on a podcast, but honestly, I'm not.
Well, Bo was talking on a podcast, and she is also not socially extroverted.
I'm not. I'm really not. I'm very shy.
Really?
Yeah. So shy. You should see my interview on this podcast. It was bad. Like,
oh no, I listened to it. I thought it was good.
It was not bad. Oh my gosh.
No, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't
I
bad.
always, well, I always feel bad about myself. So that's what that was. It was just like a self-esteem thing. But
Which
you're
is so
doing
funny
great.
because then she's like, "Yeah, I want to co-host with you." I'm like,
Oh,
"That's being on the podcast all the time." Then you know that, right?
Yeah.
That's how that works.
This side is easier than the other side. This side is easy.
I definitely think there's a link though between being really shy and really embarrassed of yourself in the past and having that need to do better. So I'm always mortified by everything I did any longer than 20 minutes ago. And then I'm like, so I'm going to keep doing stuff because I have to prove to people that I'm not as awkward as I was 20 minutes ago. And like, you know, so it does, there is definitely a link between being semi self-loathing and ridiculously introverted and also desperately wanting to put yourself out there, I think.
That's it exactly. That's it. I need that tattooed on my chest. That is me.
Oh, please don't do that.
No, we're gonna pass on that idea. That's a terrible plan. We're gonna hard pass on that. That's an awful plan. What is your best writing environment?
Oh, I love this room. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm gonna be careful with my wine, but like this is my little office space. It's great. I love it. It's also where we dry laundry because we don't live in a very big house. But I used to live with 4 people and they've been whittled down. So my flatmate, my amazing flatmate, Sophie Sherman, if you're listening, we made this place into a little spare room. And my mum and dad, they were moving, so they were getting rid of some furniture and they were just like, you can have it. So I got these bookshelves from my mum and dad, all of my old books from childhood that I'd not had with me for ages because they were back at my parents'. This settee from my mum and dad, this futon that I've had forever. It's like great, it folds out, people can sleep in it, so we've got a proper adult grown up spare room now. It's the first time. Usually my friends just like sleep in my bed with me. But yeah, so I love this room, and the reason I'm so enthusiastic about it is it's relatively new. It was like this month that I got this room to do my work, and I love it so much because before I was doing it cross-legged in bed. So yeah, I like it here. I do work in coffee shops. The terrible thing is when I get most of my ideas, it's when I'm walking or running or like out and about. So it's actually not conducive to much writing. There was a lot of time when I was doing my master's where I was walking to uni and then I'd get to uni and like almost frantically scribble down a story I did. That's where I wrote The Tracks, which is a part cheeky bloody articles. It will be part of Skets one day when I actually finish that. So yeah, I like that. I like writing outside if it's sunny. Yeah, does that answer your question? I feel like it rambles a little.
No, you can totally ramble. No, it's true. I think it's fun to write in coffee shops. I actually just went into a Starbucks that opened here. I live in a really tiny town. And I was impressed on how big this thing was and how they have tables to go sit and write. And I haven't written in a coffee shop since COVID started. And I was like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to write and just sit there and make them give me caffeine and write, because some of the other little coffee shops up here are like this big. So
Yeah.
like there's no tables, whatever. It's like literally go in and get your coffee, maybe one bench in there. So I was super excited about being able to do that. Because
funny you say
I
that,
like
because-
motion of people. I don't know. I write well at home too, and having a space. And I think it's brilliant you have your own space now. Because I think as writers, having a space, whether we use it all the time, but having a space we can create and put stuff together that makes it ours so that you feel comfortable when you go in there.
Yeah, a room of one's own, like Virginia Woolf, 100%. But yeah, it's funny you say that. When I was doing my master's, my friend Catherine, who reminds me an awful lot of you, Erica, actually. I mean,
I will take it as a compliment.
If you told me that this girl was your daughter, I'd be like, of course, 100%. She's very American, and has the same accent as you, and is a writer as well. She does a great blog, by the way, called Always Catherine, support other writers. But yeah, she used to be like, let's go write in Starbucks, and I'd be like, fantastic. And we'd all go as a group and just sit and write, and that's how I got a lot of my dissertation done. That was fluid that I was working on then. And my other friend Hannah, who is also a brilliant writer, she tried to do it as well. And she just took us to a pub, and it was ridiculous. I was like, yeah, okay, we're getting together, we'll write, this will be fantastic. And I started writing, and then she was like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm writing, Hannah. And she's like, oh yeah, sick, safe, nice. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna put this away, we're just gonna get drunk, aren't we? That's what's gonna happen. Because that's what happens. it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, definitely writing as a group is a good thing, and writing out where you can people watch is a great thing as well, for sure.
Very cool. Okay. Bo, ask a question. I'll ask the last one. Do you see? I'm letting you off the
You're
hook.
being nice. What is the hardest part about being a writer?
I'm so poor. I have no money at any given time. It's a struggle. I think the thing is, I'm happier now than I was in any of the other jobs I did. Like, I love teaching. Teaching is one of my favorite things, and I do teach at the moment, and I tutor and stuff as well. But like, when I taught properly, and I had also pretty poor pay, to be honest, but like at least money at the end of the month in my account, I wasn't as happy as I am now. And I was working in an office, and I definitely got very good money. I wasn't as happy as I am now. But it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. It gets to the point where you're just like, I've got to pay my tuition fees, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Got to pay my rent, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Like, I've had to tell people if they would please let me off paying until a few months when I get some more money. And then immediately, as soon as I've got that money, it's gone again, because I've had to pay back the people that I've owed, and then on repeat. It's hard. It's hard to like dedicate your life to something that you know isn't going to be lucrative. If I could make money doing this, that would be the most ideal life. That's the only thing that I find difficult about being a writer, because I love reading, I love writing, I love creating, I love the community, I love putting stuff out there. I love thinking I'm doing something that I really, really care about that could potentially resonate with someone, or maybe it won't, but like, it fucking might. So that, yeah, I don't think there's anything I really hate about it, except for the fact that I'm poor all the time.
Okay, my final question for you is, what advice, since you're doing your PhD, would you give authors?
Oh, authors?
Yeah, writers, what advice would you give?
Go to someone better to get advice for a start. But I mean, I think just do it. I think about what's actually your story that you want to tell. Most importantly, don't imitate the people around you. You're never going to be as good as them, but you'll always be better than anyone who's trying to be you. So find out what's special and different about you and write it down. And you don't know who it's going to resonate with, and just keep going, because it's going to be crap, and then it's going to be slightly less crap, and then it's going to be all right, but just keep going. Yeah. And I think that's kind of my philosophy in general. Is just, keep working, keep trying, keep doing it while it's fun. And anything you create, it will resonate with someone. It doesn't matter who. And God, that's definitely come from like the music that I like, which is very like learn 3 chords and start a band. And the art that I like most of the art that resonates with me is not the stuff that's really beautifully technically brilliant, but like the ridiculous explosive performance art, or like these tiny little sketches that are really, important to a lot of people. So yeah, I say just do it, make it yours, and put it out there. I don't know if that's good advice, but it's definitely what I'm sticking with.
Hey, no, stick with that. I like it. Okay, shameless self-promotion time. Let's talk about your books and how to find you on social media.
Yep, the first book, Cheeky Bloody Articles. It's under the tagline Tales for Well-Dressed Cynics and Optimistic Ragamuffins. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in the book depository. You can get it various other places. If you are in the Norwich area, come find me, because I'm going to be selling them at the end of poetry shows. And Marvel will be out March 16th. Again, Amazon, book depository, all these other places. Barnes and Noble, I think it's Barnes and Noble on there as well. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm Scruffbucket Ragamuffin. It's not really writing related very much. It's mostly just pictures of me and my cat. You can find me on Facebook if you want to. You can't find me on Twitter, I'm afraid, but I feel like that's sort of burning to the ground anyway.
That's okay. That's a whole dumpster fire in and of itself.
And I do have a website, but I haven't bothered to buy a domain name. So it's something ridiculous like Cathleen Davies writer @ricksite.com/Cathleen Davies writer something ridiculous. You can find it, I'm sure, on like my Facebook or somewhere else. But yeah, that's it. I think that's all the self-promotion I have to do. Oh, buy Queer Lives, Queer Love. I've got a really good story in there. And also, just because you should, because the proceeds go to charity and help trans youth. So do all that stuff. That's all the promotion I've got.
I love it. Very cool. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with us.
No, thank you so much for having me and for giving me an excuse to drink in the middle of the week. I like that.
Absolutely. We will always do that. Guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host has been Bo Lake. Our guest has been Kathleen Davies, and we will see you guys next. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is terrible.
And review.
And review. And we'll see you next time.
Hello, Drinking with Authors fans. This is your host, Erica Lance. Because of the change of the format of the show, welcome to the Literary Briefs portion. Enjoy.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the Literary Briefs edition. I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the fantastic Bo Lake, and our guest today is Kathleen Davies. Woo! Welcome. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. I put way too much gin in this. Wow. Like not even remembering what I'm supposed to do anymore. It's fine. So I am drinking strawberry peach juice with gin, which a friend of mine gave me strawberry peach juice. Probably should have mixed it with champagne, but I mixed it with gin instead. What's that? Okay, Bo, what are you drinking?
I have now moved on to this Blue Moon, which is delicious.
Like it matches your hair.
Always.
Like all the drinks that match your hair. Kathleen, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking this now disturbingly light bottle of cheap Merlot. I'm on my third or fourth glass, and I'm definitely feeling it. Yeah.
I fully appreciate knocking off an entire bottle of wine when I'm on this podcast, so I'm with you. Okay, first question. What is your favorite book of all time?
Catch-22 by Joseph Heller.
Oh, wow. Why? I love that book, but why?
I think it's genius. I think when I first read it, I was about 16, and the idea that you could have so many characters, but they were all well-rounded and hilarious, and plots that interlink so effortlessly that it was a surprise when you found the connections between them. Humor that was that well done, because it's the kind of humor, it's not like, oh, just a funny situation. It's something that's been meticulously set up in advance, so that when it happens, you're almost just laughing at the absurdity of it. Oh, I just think it's brilliant. It'll make you laugh and cry. The death of Snowden was one of the most heart-wrenching things I've ever read. The chapter on Major. Oh, to this day, one of my all-time favorite characters in anything ever, because he's just so sad. Like, yeah, I think it's one of my favorite books of all time, for sure.
Very cool. What about your least favorite book of all time?
Oh my God. So it's Jack Kerouac, On the Road. I've got a bit of a thing about this. I've always having to go at my mate Carl for it, because he actually loves Kerouac, even though he acknowledges that he's problematic, and he needs me to stop having to go at him about liking Kerouac. But I just think it's not edited. I think it's rushed. I think basically it's a privileged white lad knocking about America for ages, being super racist and misogynistic, and then being like, travel, wanderlust. And at the end, they're all sleeping with like underage Mexican children. They're just like, oh, what a wonderful world we live in. I just think it's crap. I think it needs an editor. I think everyone tells me his other books are better, but I wrote a post about it on Facebook one time where I read it when I was 16, and I hated it so much that I was always getting in arguments about it, especially in English seminars. And then I reread it after I traveled, and I'd been to China and I'd been to Spain, and I was right all along. It was still shit. So like, you know, I just can't stand it. I think it's so smug, and I think it's everything that's wrong with white male writers. Because my favorite book is by Joseph Heller, so it's not like I'm completely biased, but I think, God, it's just dire, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, Bo. Look at me not monopoly.
Who is your favorite author of all time?
Oh my God, Virginia Woolf, I think. Oh, so I've actually got like this gnarly Virginia Woolf tattoo. Can I show it? I don't know. Maybe you can see. This is just yeah. I love Virginia Woolf. I think she's an absolute diamond. The best of the best, isn't she? I mean, it's bad because I've gone on about how problematic John Kerouac is, and of course she's ridiculously problematic as well. But like, just an absolute icon in modernism. The way that like once you get into stream of consciousness, it's like you're not even reading. You're just like flowing along this minds of all these people, and yeah, an amazing writer. I think it's incredible. The Waves, definitely one of my faves.
What
Very
about
cool.
your
What's your
least?
favorite snack while you're writing?
Oh, favorite snack? All right, that's what I'm answering. Baby bells. Big on cheese.
Ooh.
Big on cheese. Real fanatic.
Very cool. Sorry, Bo, go ahead.
Least favorite author.
Apparently Jack Kerouac.
Well, that was least
I've only
favorite
read the wrong
book.
book. I've only read the wrong book, so I couldn't possibly comment. I mean, oh, you know what?
Besides Jack Kerouac.
Look, because the thing is, I'll read one book and I don't like it, and then I'm not going to read any more. So I remember someone recommended that I read Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, and I did. I read it because I kept thinking there was something that I wasn't getting in it. There was something that I was like missing, and then I got to the end of the book and I was like, no, she's literally saying that like architecture is more important than homeless people. Like that's the point of the book. That's it. That's the great message. And I just thought, oh God, that's absolutely ludicrous. And I think she's one of those that's been kind of like taken by the right wing as a bit of an icon to justify cruelty and selfishness and capitalism. So maybe Ayn Rand, maybe not. But you know, there's probably loads of people like, you know, there's probably some underground indie writer who, if I met him, I'd be like, God, they're a real dick. Like, so I don't know. I couldn't possibly say who my favorite writer is.
Who's outside of Virginia Woolf, who's an author, dead or alive, that you would like to have lunch with?
Ooh, to have lunch with. That's a very different question, because a lot of the writers that I love, I think, would probably be horrible to have lunch with. I mean, my first thought when I was like, another writer that I love, I was like, oh, Sylvia Plath. And then I was like, to have lunch with. Cried, no. I'm trying to think, oh, who's fun? Who's like really, really fun and funny, who writes fantastic books? I just can't really think of an example. Of course, there's a million, but I don't know. Maybe Edgar Allan Poe or someone like that. Somebody that's just like so much of a character that they're almost a caricature. Like I'm sure he wasn't like that in real life. I'm sure he was far less gothic and ridiculous, but that would be really fun. I think Mary Shelley. Oh Jesus, I would love to have lunch with Mary Shelley, the original goth girl. Yeah, I mean the OG. Definitely. Yeah, actually, no. What am I talking about? It'd be Mary Shelley. I'd want to sit across with her and be like, "Give me the goths. What's going on with Percy, mate? What's the house with Lord Byron? Tell me everything." And she'd be like, "This is my lover's heart that's been calcified," and I'd be like, "Oh, you're so cool." Yeah, no, probably Mary Shelley. I've got a lot of friends that are mental goth girls. To be fair, Lizzie, if you're listening.
Bo?
What is your favorite book to movie adaptation?
Book to movie adaptation. Ooh. Okay. Y'all ever seen The Lorax?
Yes.
Yep.
I really love The Lorax a lot. I saw it at the cinema and I cried. I thought it was fantastic. And I'm a huge Dr. Seuss fan. I've got another Dr. Seuss tattoo as well, like big fan. And I just thought it was brilliant. And who is it? Is it Danny DeVito that does the voice of the Lorax who speaks to the trees? What casting? What a guy! Like I love him probably more than I love most people. So The Lorax is definitely up there. Really love The Hours as well. I thought that was spectacular. Very mixed feelings about Clockwork Orange, but The Shining. Oh my god! Stephen King, I think, disagreed with me, but The Shining's incredible, and I saw it recently at the cinema with my flatmate Sophie Sherman, the goat. So yeah, those three, I think they're up there.
I like it. What about where's somewhere you want to visit?
Where do I want to visit? Oh god, everywhere. I don't know. I mean, I want to go to one of the Caribbean sort of islands, or kind of like Central America-ish, where it's like beautiful and beachy. I want to be like chilling out in Haiti for a little while, or knocking about in Hawaii. I do this thing called Wordle, which is like Wordle but with the countries, and I do that every morning and then like Google the place and imagine I was on holiday there. So yeah, and the ones where I'm always like, God, I wish I was there, are always the kind of Caribbean islands, like just in between South and North America. So that area, ideally.
Very cool. What about a literary world that you want to visit?
Oh, you know what? I was just reading 100 Years of Solitude. Why not Macondo?
Ooh, yeah.
That'd be cool. Like kind of like, and also it kind of fits in with that I want to be in the middle of North and South America, that kind of vibe. But yeah, I think that would be cool. That kind of like strange, hidden, isolated magic place.
Very cool. So,
What is your Starbucks order or your coffee shop order?
I'm pretty basic, to be honest. I'll have an Americano with some milk, or if I'm feeling fancy, a chai latte.
ooh,
That's it.
see, I'm all about the dirty chai lattes. Dirty
Sure.
chai lattes. Throw some caffeine, more caffeine in there. More coffee. It's a thing. It's a thing. What is if you could be any mythical or fantastical creature, what would you be and why?
Any mythical or fantastical creature. Give me a second to think about this one, and I'm gonna regret it as soon as I say it as well. I don't want to be a mermaid because I'm not that good at swimming. I don't know if I want to be a centaur. I think that would be bizarre. Maybe a dragon?
I have a hard time getting into a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Somebody said centaurs once to me, and this is the thing about centaurs, like they're beautiful and the way they're represented, they're just absolutely sort of epic creatures. But you have the human torso, which is going to range somewhere between 2 to 3.5, 4 feet, right? If you cut us off at the waist, I would be 3 feet off of a horse body. That's going to be huge. There aren't doorways. You're not going up places. Like you're not doing any dungeon crawling, or you're not going into necessarily a lot of taverns because you're not going to fit through the fucking door and under the ceilings. Like this is a thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I get in a pub? If I can't get in a pub, I'm not interested in being that creature.
Okay, so we've agreed not centaur. I have no idea. I don't know. I think probably I would think of something. I'll think of something brilliant and ironic as soon as this podcast ends. But for the moment, I mean, maybe something like a kind of Medusa-esque Greek creature, like a Scylla and Charybdis kind of like vengeful thing. I don't know. I just can't think. Sod it. I'll be a unicorn. Why not?
Okay.
I'm a bisexual woman. I'm already a unicorn in many communities. It's fine.
Very cool. So,
Is there a quote from a book or a poem that has resonated with you and like stuck with you?
Yeah. So I mean, I've got many tattoos. So on my arm, I have "Kid, you'll move mountains," which is a Dr. Seuss quote that resonated a lot for me. On my back, I have "It's history, it's poetry," which is the Catcher in the Rye line about people may not always understand you, but they've always left a record of the things that they didn't understand, so it could resonate with people. I think my all-time favorite literary line, and it's very cliche and overused, but I love it, is "Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt." Like that's one of those sentences that's enough to make you tear up out of context. Slaughterhouse-Five, Kurt Vonnegut. So yeah, that one's pretty good for me. I don't know. There's now, of course, a million flooding my head that I want to say, but yeah, that's great.
if you could pick any character in any novel's book to lead their life, but you have to lead everything in their life, who would you choose?
Oh, well, I've got to think of a book with very little conflict, really. You know what? I'm gonna say Eat, Pray, Love. Just because if I get to go to Italy and eat loads of pizza and then go to India and do loads of yoga and then go to Indonesia and have great sex for a little while, I can do that. I'll handle the divorce, which isn't even really in the book. It's only like a bit at the beginning before she goes on this fantastic rediscovery journey. So why not? Yeah. And her publisher paid for all of that, by the way. Like I'll just like hit them up, my tiny independent publishers. Do you want to just send me around the world? I'll write you a really mediocre book about it. Sorry, I'm pissed. I've got pissed already. Shit.
That's welcome to the podcast. I couldn't remember my exit on the last one. Go for it.
What is your desert island book?
Catch
One
22
book.
by Joseph Heller.
Oh,
No, I've got to say a different one, haven't I? I can't just say my favorite book. The one that I'd have when I'm stuck on a desert island. Oh,
yeah.
so many people, How to Build a Boat has got to be up there, hasn't it? Desert island book. Right. Tell you what, because it's the only way that I'm ever going to read it, Ulysses. It's the only chance you're ever going to get of me actually finishing Ulysses is if you stick me on a desert island. So I might as well use the opportunity. Why not? No, actually, I go for something like A Suitable Boy, something that's massive so that it keep me going. Like I thought of Ulysses, but actually A Suitable Boy is much more readable and far more entertaining. So I'll go with that.
What is your favorite tropes? Like when you're reading a book, what are some of your favorite tropes?
I love this person's really objectively good looking, but we're pretending they're ugly. I think that's really funny. I love that in like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where like what's his name? Mac anyway, he's like married to Dee in real life, but they spend half the show going on about how hideous and terrible she is, even though she's one of the most beautiful people in the world. I can't remember, is it The Other Guys, that ridiculous comedy film where he's like, I'm gonna go home to my plain wife, and she's like a beautiful model. I think that's like, as a comedy tropes go, that's one of my favorites. I love proud queer pulls awkward straight woman into dance floor. I love there's so many. I love angsty hard boy is soft for the soft one. Like all of this stuff. Like, I wish I wasn't a sucker for it. I wish I was above it all, but I'm not. I love it.
I like it too. What about what is a trope you don't like?
A trope I don't like. Oh, I tell you what drives me mad. You didn't realize you needed this, but I realized you needed this, and that's why I did it for you anyway. Nah, fuck that. It's control, man. I don't like it. I don't like that sort of stuff. And it happens a lot in horror at the moment, because I watch a lot of horror, especially horror to do with mutilation, and it's coming up over and over again. This to make it a twist. It's for the literary purposes of making it a proper twist, where they go, look, I've done this awful, unforgivable thing to you, but it was for your own good, and soon you'll realize it. They do it in The Perfection, when she manipulates a woman, drugs and manipulates a woman, so she chops off her own hands. But then they team up because she did it for her own good. Like,
have you seen the movie The Menu yet?
I love The Menu. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah,
I thought that was such a great twist on that exact thing that you said when she does the hamburger thing.
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah.
And that's a twist on somebody doing that exact thing.
Yeah, and it's fully deserved as well, because it was just, all of these people are ludicrous, hateful, pretentious people that have ruined the art of cooking, and it seems like she was the only one that understood it as just like this random sex worker that's been swept up in it undeservedly. It was God, such a gorgeous film, so funny and ironic. The only thing I couldn't help thinking though is oh my God, Anna Taylor-Joy. She's never had a hamburger in her life. Look at her. She's absolutely gorgeous. She weighs all of 6 stone. No way is she eating hamburgers. But yeah, no, it was a great film.
Very true. Okay, Bo, guess what you get?
The final question.
Yeah, make it good.
Every time she goes, Bo, all the questions just come out of my brain, and I have nothing.
I think it's hysterical because she has all these questions, and then I go, Bo.
I have a whole list. There's a whole list here, and I forget all of them. How do you deal with writer's block?
Just do it anyway. Yeah. Like just sitting in front of a keyboard and a blank screen and going, this is shit. I am writing shit. This is awful. I have to reach my word count. And then eventually, like, the shit clears and you end up with something that's not shit. And then when you go back and edit it, you just delete all that shit. But you write your way out of it in a way. Just do it anyway. I mean, the amount of stories I've started and not finished because I didn't have an idea going into them, and I didn't have an idea halfway through, and nothing materialized, and it was just crap. But it's fine. because at least I got out of it in a way, just doing that sort of stuff. And if you can't do that, if you don't have the time to do that, read. Jesus, read all the time. Writers should be reading more than they write. I think there's so many smug, arrogant writers that think their work is brilliant and everyone should read it, but don't take the time to read anyone else's work. And just read all the time, as much as you can, as diverse as you can. So many voices, and like a lot of them really deserve to be heard.
Very cool. Shameless self-promotion time.
Oh yeah, I've got books in that. I've got this book called Cheeky Bloody Articles. It's available to buy on the internet if you Google it. Lots of places, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all that. I've got a new book coming out called I'm Marvel. You should get that. Yeah, follow me on Instagram, Scruff Bucket Ragamuffin. Read all the stuff that's on my website if you'd like to. Come to poetry events in Norwich. I'll probably be there.
And very cool. You've been so much fun to have on this podcast.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry?
I said thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you again for having me. Honestly, it's been really fun.
Very cool. Guys, this has been Drinking with Authors, the Literary Briefs edition, and at least 2 of the 3 of us on this podcast are pretty drunk right now. Or pissed, as they say in the UK. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And
review.
Whatever. I've been Erica Lance. My co-host has been Bo Lake, trying to help me remember what I'm actually supposed to say. Our guest has been Kathleen Davies, and we will see you next time.